Welcome back to Just Chattin, and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, he is wandering around here somewhere. Probably, actually, I think he's sleeping. That's what my money's on. It's been very hot here. It's going to hit 100 degrees in the next couple of days, but the last couple of days have been in the 90s, and he hates bad weather. He doesn't like it when it rains. He doesn't like it if it gets too hot or too cold. This cat does so much complaining about the weather, I swear you would think he's British. And our British friends know exactly what I'm talking about. It is his favorite topic of conversation. It gets hot, he yowls at me. It rains, he yowls at me, like somehow I'm supposed to fix this. However, he has been coming around looking for cuddle and reassurance, so he might make an appearance. And the reason for this, of course, is he wants me to change the weather. And as soon as he figures out that there are people on the other end of this camera, he's going to be begging you to change the weather too. Sorry, that's the deal. All right, we are going to take a quick look at the intro, and then we will be right back because we've got a couple of rather entertaining stories for this evening. So, the first of our entertaining stories. Nutmeg has finally restocked as ever. Remember, she said she was going to. Then she said she wasn't going to. Nothing until 2026. And then she comes out with new stuff. Well, her idea of new stuff is apparently, instead of runny raspberry jam that everyone mocked, she's come out with apricot jam. And some apricot tea, as opposed to the hibiscus tea that people were spitting back into their cups. Hey, when you got a winner, you stick with it. Also, of course, the flour sprinkles are back because, yeah, not like they were mocked. And she is talking about releasing wine in July. And, of course, July is just basically a couple of weeks away, not even. So, let's take a look at what happened with the original outlay, which happened on Friday. Yes, they all sold out. Guess why? Obviously, she is not restocking in any volume because she enjoys being able to say, look, everything's sold out. Because this is all ego-driven for her. And by releasing only the smallest of quantities on her sales site, which isn't even really hers, it's contracted. So the sales site releases a few items. She gets to say it's sold out in 20 minutes. Because again, it's all about her ego. And she wants to present herself. Well, these days she's trying to present herself as a business tycoon. Yeah, the jam queen of California. Now, the problem with this, of course, is she never releases the amounts of products that she is putting for sale. So we don't know. It could be 300 jars of jam. It could be 500 little containers of flour sprinkles. We have no idea. I would say, given the fact that they sold out in 20 minutes, it was probably an extremely low quantity. Still, she's hyping that, and the mainstream media is repeating it. Everything's sold out. It's like, yeah, because there wasn't that much to begin with. And you would think that they, and by that I mean the mainstream media, would at least be honest enough to say, yes, everything's sold out, but we don't know how much stuff was there. Nope, they are just repeating her PR back. So, yeah, we've seen how very unreliable they are when it comes to Nutmeg and the sock puppet. But now let's go over to the wine. Now, the creation manufacture of alcoholic beverages is not something you can do in your bathtub on a, well, actually you can do it in your bathtub on a whim. Selling it is another story. So Nutmeg has obviously purchased wine, or, and this is what I am suggesting, is acting as a vendor for some existing wine enterprise, whether it is a vineyard or a wine distributorship. I don't know. But we do know she isn't making the wine. She is, in fact, not making any of these products. It is not even likely that she has anything to say about the manufacturing process, that she is simply acting as a vending platform. Yeah, if she only had 600 million more items, she could be Amazon. Well, actually, she could be Temu, but she'd have to slash her prices by about 95% for that. Frankly, she'd have to slash her prices to survive on Amazon, too. So what we've got here is a pretend business. She is pretending that, as ever, is a manufacturer and distributor of home goods, everything from jam to the latest one she's thrown out has been overnight accommodations. That's not what's going on. She is simply going out, getting other people's products, slapping her label on it, throwing it on somebody else's distribution platform, and reaping the profits. This is, in fact, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a scam, because it's perfectly legal to do this, but it's a fraud. The people who are buying these items do not realize the very, very limited extent to which Nutmeg is involved in any aspect of this business. And the aspect in which she is involved, which is just making sure there's enough product to fill the need, has clearly been a dismal freaking failure. So I would have to say, wow, what are we doing here? And again, I'm going to fall back on what my usual explanation is. It's about nothing more than getting her name in the headlines. Does she have any commitment to this? Is she going to see this through for the long haul? Absolutely not. She has not seen anything through for the long haul. Nothing. Even when she was on Suits, which prior to nabbing the sock puppet had been the greatest success of her life, she was still looking around for other jumping off spots. Suits wasn't sufficiently gratifying for her ego because, after all, sixth player in a 6-member cast. So she was trying to be a social media star. She decided she wanted to establish herself as someone like Emma Watson, a politically active philanthropist. It's never enough. She's always looking for the next venture, because it's not about the venture. It's about getting her name in the press. So as soon as we clue into this, we will be disempowering her. All right. Now let's move on to the next entertaining story, because this one comes from Jack Royston from Newsweek, who has had a long history of basically parroting back whatever the Sussex camp has spit out there. He was virtually a non-paid public relations agent for them for many years. And it looks like either he or perhaps his bosses at Newsweek, let's hope, have made sure things are a little more balanced. Recent article, and again, all of the articles are in the video notes, so go check it out for yourself. Recent article, he cites the major scandals that Nutmeg and the sock puppet have experienced in the last several years. So I would have to say they're not scandals. They're more like absolute public relations nightmares. That's how I would characterize them. But he gave us his list. So I say we take a look at it because this tells us where the mainstream media sees their failure points as having occurred. So let's start with the curtsy. Nutmeg rather famously mocked the Queen with a pretend curtsy and talk about, well, it's like a medieval times dinner theater. It was unfortunate. It was disrespectful. In my opinion, the entire thing was a non-issue because no one is compelled to curtsy to the Queen. By the way, I've cited that in the video notes because there are so many of you who come back on me when I say that. Check the video notes. I've got the royal website cited here where they plainly say no one is obliged to bow or curtsy, that the monarch is perfectly willing and prepared to accept a simple handshake instead. So, no, not curtsying to the late Queen would not have been an act of disrespect. She wouldn't have seen it that way, and I don't see why anybody else should make it appear that she would have been so petty as to do so. No, the woman reigned for 70 years. She knew royal protocol, and she was perfectly happy to accept handshakes. Perfectly happy to. So, bless her heart. Now, that was something that drew a lot of backlash because, again, not about the curtsy, about the mocking of the late Queen and about equating royal protocol when she married into that family, not just voluntarily. This was grabbing the brass ring. She jumped in with both feet, thank you very much. Marrying into that family and then making fun of their traditions, and in doing it in a very disrespectful way, was just not okay. So yeah, I wouldn't call it a scandal. I would say it was a serious PR nightmare. Next up, the sock puppet, in his book, mentions his frozen Todger. Now, that would be unacceptable under any circumstances at all. Thank you very much, Harry. We don't need to know this. Are you familiar with the concept of too much information? But then he took this TMI gaffe and turned it into something truly creepy by talking about how he smeared his mother's face cream, the cream she used on her lips, on his frozen Todger, and smelled it and imagined his mother in the room with him. That brought it to a whole new level of ick. And yes, there was tremendous backlash, not to mention a lot of well-deserved mockery for this. But I am again not going to say this was a scandal because very few people hit on that truly bizarre Oedipal thing about his mother's lips and the face cream and his Todger and right in the room with him. Yeah, this is a boy who needs serious therapy. So I have to give them that one. It was a disaster. Was it a scandal? Yeah, probably. Next up, and although I can't say this was any more than another public relations disaster, it was Bill Simmons of Spotify labeling them effing grifters and saying that he would have loved to have been in the negotiations that terminated their contract with Spotify. Because, and Newsweek did point this out to their credit, prior to Bill Simmons' statements, the statement that had been released by the Sussexes had read that they had parted amicably by mutual consent. When Bill Simmons came out with his statements, it made it very clear that Spotify had terminated the contract because Nutmeg and the sock puppet were not holding up their end. And that turned an ordinary business event into a rather serious public relations disaster. I'm not sure I would go so far as to call it a scandal, but PR disaster, absolutely. And it did nothing to harm Bill Simmons. In fact, I think he became much more popular as a result of his comments. And next up, we have the Vanity Fair piece describing Nutmeg as a dictator in high heels. Scandal? No. This scandal had broken years earlier with her abusive treatment of the staff when she was a working royal. We know this contributed significantly to the breakdown in the relationship between William and his brother. We know that a lot of people were badly traumatized by having to work with Nutmeg back in the UK. So, scandal, no, the scandal had already taken place. This was a public relations disaster. This was a story in which it was presented by current and former employees, all anonymously, that Nutmeg was still abusing the staff, that she was still treating them all like trash and garbage, and no one had a kind word to say about her except for the people who were still working for her, still on her payroll, and clearly instructed to do so. Yeah, problem, this was not the scandal. The scandal was the first reporting of the events in the UK, and now this was just more bad press because it showed that Nutmeg took her trashy habits across the Atlantic with her, and that it wasn't about Nutmeg having a culture clash with the British. By the way, not all of her UK staff were British, just saying. But that was very much how the Sussex camp was dismissing it. Culture clash between the British employees and the American Duchess. No, no. If that's true, then what's your explanation for why it's still going on today in California? So, scandal, not really. Again, PR nightmare. So next up, we have the Pat Tillman Awards, the ESPY Awards. There was a tremendous amount of backlash when the sock puppet was given this award because he is not a sports figure. This was an award intended to go to sports figures. It was the Pat Tillman Award. And the sock puppet got the award ostensibly on behalf of the Invictus Games, and he kept Invictus athletes on the podium with him, mostly because I'm sure he realized he would have been booed otherwise. It was extremely unpopular, and he and Nutmeg even got up and left with their very large entourage as soon as he had received his award. Didn't even bother to stay for the rest of the ceremony. This created a tremendous amount of ill will, bad feelings, and it opened up to the public the ridiculous nature of these awards Nutmeg and the sock puppet are being given, either because they are paying for them or because organizations know that two controversial characters like this are going to bring a tremendous amount of publicity to their award. The truth is, I had never heard of the Pat Tillman Award until the sock puppet got it. But I would suggest it has the potential to backfire, because just like the Aviation Award before then, these are organizations to which I will never donate. I used to donate to the NAACP. Don't do that anymore, because it's not okay with me. I understand People feel the need to play these political games, bring in the celebrity, kiss their butt, give them an award to bring in awareness. But you could pick better celebrities, folks. And I will hold the choices against the organizations. So, as I said, the NAACP is an organization I used to donate to. Not happening again. The Pat Tillman Award, I think Pat Tillman was a great hero. And it saddens me that, no, I'm never going to be able to do this. But I am never going to be able to do this with a clean conscience. So sorry. Great hero, many other deserving awards programs that I could feel more comfortable donating my money to. Sorry, that's just the way it is. So, scandal, no, this was more a scandal for the ESPY Awards, for the Pat Tillman Award. It wasn't so much a scandal for Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet, but it was definitely a public relations disaster. And finally, because they saved the best for last, so am I, South Park and the Worldwide Privacy Tour. You know, when a very popular cartoon is making fun of you, you know you're screwing up. You know you are no longer taken seriously. And yes, the folks at South Park were just the ones to do it. It was brilliant. I keep a tape of that episode, and every now and then when I just want a good laugh, I will replay it because it was terrific. I will also tell you, because I am not of the South Park generation, that is the only episode of South Park I have ever seen. They do a follow-up, I'm going to watch that too. But yeah, it worked out beautifully for South Park because it gave them access to a whole new audience. And I may, when I find the time, one day go back and take a look at their show. Because certainly I do like this episode. But was it a scandal? Not even close. This was a PR disaster. This was showing the whole world that even little cartoon characters are mocking them. And they put in all kinds of tiny little jabs that you had to pay close attention to catch them. Like the cartoon sock puppet hanging out in front of the window, exposing his frozen toddler to the world. Nutmeg and her rather bizarre list of accomplishments. It was priceless. It did more to harm the Sussex reputation than almost anything else, with the possible exception of the Sussexes themselves, because they have certainly been the orchestrator of their own bad press. If they didn't behave badly, no one would be mocking them, right? So it all goes back to them in the first place. But South Park, utterly priceless. And we definitely have them to thank for the fact that people are not taking them seriously. That for every one of their little Sussex squaddies, there are a dozen people who will look at this and say, oh, good Lord, not them again. Anyway, these were two interesting stories that came out that I thought you would get a kick out of. I am glad that Newsweek is getting a little more objective in their reporting of what's going on in the Sussex camp. For a long time, they had been as much a PR outlet as the Puff magazines like People. People still is their PR outlet. You want to know how much of Nutmeg's jam has sold out in how short a period of time? Go to People. They'll tell you. But we don't go to them for real news. We have historically gone to Newsweek for real news. So I would say their championing of the Sussexes was pretty bad for their reputation, but I'm glad to see they're doing a little bit to pull their fat out of the fire. May they continue in health and prosperity. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. thank you all so much for being here with us this evening. I am very sure that many of you here in the U.S. are dealing with the same heat wave that poor Audie's been dealing with. Well, and I've been dealing with it too, and I have a cranky cat on top of that. So, yes, thank you for being here, because I know the heat wave hasn't been pleasant, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. For the rest of you, well, thank you for being here regardless of what your weather is like. I hope to see you all again next time. We're going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out, and in the meantime, have a terrific day.
Loose the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His true